Morning, everybody. How's it going? Like I said on Twitter, sorry for the late record. I meant to record this a couple days ago, but just been busy, life and stuff. So anyway, so basically, I'm just going to talk about some RAS stuff with the Packers and their athletic thresholds and that type of stuff. Because, like I said, I've noticed there's a lot of like misinformation or wrong information out there about it. People claiming that they've done the research, and I could just tell they haven't done all the research, or they're like half wrong or half right or whatever you want to call it, or just completely wrong. Um, because like I've said before, I've been researching the Packers and the thresholds, um, since Ted was there, like probably 2008, I think it was something like that, 2009. So it's something I've been researching. I've been following for a long time. Some of these people, like I said before, have only been doing it for a couple of years, and I guess some of their information they're like half right, or they're just totally wrong, or they're saying weird stuff that doesn't make sense. So I just figured I'd get this out there, try and educate people better, because I see people, continuing that in misinformation, and I'd rather people at least have the right information. So, like I said, I put the questions out there for people to ask me questions about the Packers, RS, and the athletic thresholds and all that type of stuff. Okay, so sorry, the first question was for Garrison Anderson. He said, could you cover safety and how the thresholds may need to rise with transitioning defenses, i.e., Halfley looking for a post or free safety? Okay, so for that, I don't think they're really going to change it, because they already have pretty high thresholds for what they're looking for with their safeties for the most part, especially athletically. Ever since Ted, basically every safety has been at least 5'11", outside of Marvell Underwood, who was drafted in '05. So, and he was like 5'10" and a half, I think it was. And then, so of course, the lightest safety they drafted was Darnell Savage at 198. So I don't think those are going to change much. You may see that as far as like the what do you call it, like the threshold, like the bare minimum. We may see them draft some little bit bigger guys for playing box and stuff like that, but I don't think you're going to see any like giant size safeties, and I don't see anybody like 230, 235, or probably not even 225, maybe a 220 guy, but probably not even that. Probably like a 215 type guy, something like that. So because they've always drafted highly athletic safeties. Some like the thresholds have always been like at least a vertical of like at least 35 inches or better, and a broad jump of 9 feet 10 inches or more. That was like the bare minimum, but most of the guys they drafted have been at least 10 feet. So look for guys for like a 10-foot broad jump, like I said, a 35-inch or better, 5'11", 198 or better. And then also, but with this being said, though, I think with the free safety, they're not gonna be drafting, probably, I should say, rephrase it. Probably not gonna draft anybody that's running like a 4.6 anymore, because they're gonna need that speed, you're gonna need that range to go both sides of the field. So I don't think you'll see any 4.6 guys anymore, like Clint Dix and Tyrone Culver. But in Goody, at least in this, he's only drafted a couple safeties. They've been both 4.54 or faster. So I think he'll kind of continue that. He'll stay in that 4.54 faster range, whatever, for his safeties, 4.55, something like that, like that kind of type of thing. And of course, the three cone. Of course, the Packers like three cone for basically everybody. And especially for the free safety, he's going to need to have a three cone of 7.07 or faster, because that's the slowest one on record with the Packers, at least, is 7.07. So preferably like a 7.0, preferably like a 7 or a 7 or faster. Okay, sorry, I'm just going to switch back, going back and forth here real quick. And then the next question was from I'm Just 10. He says, I'd be interested in hearing about O-line. Green Bay consistently finds late round O-line who become starters. Seems like there's a lot to glean there from their success. Okay, so the O-line thresholds, they're pretty simple for the Packers, which is kind of funny because some people get it wrong. I don't understand how people are getting it wrong. But anyway, with that being said, it's pretty simple, because for the most part, with the offensive tackles and the interior offensive line, it's for the most part, it's the same. The main difference is you're looking at is the arm length. So with the offensive tackles, they haven't drafted a guy to play primarily offensive tackle with his arm length being less than 33 and a quarter. They have Brian Balaga and Zach Tom both had 33 and a quarter. They haven't drafted anybody to play tackle with shorter arms than that. And most of them have been like, most of the guys have been like 33 and a half, 34, 35, stuff like that. But with interior offensive linemen, the shortest has been about 32 inches. I think a long, long time ago, if you guys remember Scott Wells, if I remember right, his arms was like 31 or something like that, 31 and a half, something like that. But since Ted, nobody with 32, shorter than 32-inch arms. So I'd look for, I'd probably take anybody off with under 32-inch arms. Okay, and then they also really want their guards to have some sort of tackle experience. And pretty much every guard they've drafted since Ted has had some tackle experience in college, whether it was, a season, 2 seasons, 3 seasons, whatever, and they're converting to a guard, or they played guard the last year or two, and then maybe as a freshman they played some tackle, and not even usually just like, oh, they played one game with tackle. It's usually at least a couple games, something like that. To be sure on that, I'd have to go back and look at the data for sure but it's usually at least a couple games of tackle experience in college. If they have no tackle experience, they're probably not on Green Bay's board. Since Ted, they drafted, I believe, one guard that had no tackle experience. That's it. And then but with center, they drafted a couple centers that had no tackle experience. Lindsley, I believe, had no tackle experience, and Myers has no tackle experience, and then Hansen had no tackle experience. So those only guys, but even they've had some centers with tackle experience. But like I said, with their centers, with their guys who are just basically pure centers, they haven't had tackle experience. So that's not a requirement for the centers. And then also, but of course it helps. Like I said, with centers have tackle experience, that helps, of course. And for the weight, they're looking for guys between about 300 to 320 ish, because of Rashawn Ryan and Derek Sherrod were both 321, so slightly over. If somebody's 325, I wouldn't take them off, but I kind of have them in that kind of gray area where they may or may not be on the board, back of the board. But I still have them on there just in case, because it's not too far off. But anybody like 330, 328, I would just take off for sure. And then as far as the height, all their interior offensive linemen have been pretty much anywhere from 6'3" to 6'6", and the offensive tackles have been 6'4" to 6'7". But if there's a tackle that's like 6'3.5", but he has like 34-inch arms and everything else fits, I wouldn't be surprised if they listed him as a tackle or took him as a tackle. But generally, those are the heights. And then 40 times for both interior and offensive tackles have been about mid 5'3s or faster. But I've noticed they prefer a little bit faster with their tackles. Their tackles have been like 5'2 or faster, something like that. But interior guys, at least in the mid 5'3s, so like 5'3", 5'3", like that, or faster. And then 3-cone, of course, is super important with the Packers. We've heard Goody talk about the Mendoza line with Jair. So I would say the Mendoza line for the 3-cone for their offensive lineman is 7'9", which is not that fast, not very fast, kind of slow actually. But generally they like 7.77 or faster. They've taken a couple guys, like I said, with that 7'9", in that 7'9" range. There was a guy who took a 7'9" and a guy with a 7.85, something like that. But generally speaking, 7.77 or faster. And you got to have a decent short shuttle. They're not super keen on the short shuttle, but at least a decent short shuttle of 4.8 or faster. And then let's see. Okay, so that's on the O line. Sorry, again, switching next question. Okay, from Wyoming buddy, Love and Dobbs. Why did I say Dobbs? Dobbs. He said, what do they look for in offensive tackle, offensive guards, and then corners and safeties? Okay, so on that one, I already covered, like I said, the safety is no line. So that's already been answering those first two questions. So about corner, though, it's kind of somewhat similar to safety. But the threshold at the height, their quote-unquote Mendoza line, like Goody said, is about 5'10.25", but it's got to be someone special. So not just anyone's 5'10.25". If it's a guy's 5'10.25" and he has like an RS score of like 7, he's probably not on the board. But generally it's 5'10.5". But like I said, he'll make an exception for someone like Jair. And then what's it called? And then for their weight, they're usually looking for about 190 or heavier. 189, 188 is fine. But about around 190 is preferable. And the arm length to some of the safeties, I think I forgot to mention that earlier, but they like their corners and their safeties to have at least 31-inch arms. They've drafted a couple guys with under like a couple slots, like Shamarjeen Charles. He had 30 and like a quarter or something like that, 30 and a half, something like that inches. But other than him, they've pretty much drafted all their corners have been all 30 inch arms or longer. And then same with safety, but they have the one safety they drafted, Jerron McMillan, who had like 30 and a 3/8 or something like that. Okay, and then that's usually on the day 3 guys that they'll take the guys with the shorter arms. I'm just looking at my data here, my little script here. And then also, oh yeah, RS scores. So there's corners, they're usually looking for RS score over 9. All the corners Goodies drafted, they've all had an RS score of 9 or higher. So you're looking for that as well. And then a broad jump of at least 10 feet. And then running a 4, 5, 6, 40 or faster, but they prefer, like 4, 5 flat or faster. They drafted a bunch of guys with like 4, 4, 4, 4, 5, 4, 3, 8, stuff like that. So, and then a 3 cone, they want 7.15 or faster. But, that's like your minimum Mendoza line, whatever you want to call it, your threshold. But they prefer if your 3 cone is 7 or faster, or even under 7. Okay, so that's that for the corners. And then on to Tyler Dershell. He was asking for arm length for linemen. He gets confused every year. So like I kind of already covered it. Like I said, it's pretty simple. Like I said, 33 and a quarter for offensive tackles. Anything between 32 inches and above for interior offensive linemen. I don't think they drafted any interior guys that had 35 inch arms, but anywhere between 32 and 34 basically. But of course, it's gonna be longer. I don't think the Packers would say, "Oh, we're not going to draft him as an interior guy because he has 35 inch arms." Okay, now on to Lambeau Lounge. He says how often they've strayed. He's asking how often they strayed from their thresholds and the results of this. So, like, if the guy panned out or not, and then when they drafted a player who didn't fit, the thresholds. Sorry. So it's kind of been a mixed bag. I actually kind of researched this a little bit last night before I wrote all this down. But they've been a mixed bag of guys who've been decent and then guys who have been bad. If I had to lean one way there, I'd say it's been more bad. But like I said, there's been some hits but probably slightly more misses. So, for example, some hits. Randall Cobb, a hit. He was out of the thresholds. He was like a 4 or 5 RAS or something like that. So he was a hit, obviously. Eddie Lacy was a hit. He didn't test all the overall that well. He didn't do all the testing, but his RAS was like a 5, something like that, 5 or 6. No, not even 6. I think it was like 5. Okay, of course, every Packers fan's favorite, Micah Hyde. He was actually outside of their athletic thresholds. The size-wise, he was okay, but athletic testing, I believe it was a 4.5 or 4.56, something like that, RAS score. So he was obviously a hit, although the Packers didn't use him right. They used him as a slot and outside corner. They should have been using a safety, but still counts as a hit. Another one Packers forget that actually didn't fit their thresholds athletically is David Bakhtiari. He was a 6.72 when they like their guys, 8 plus. I think part of it was his underdeveloped frame. He was 299 when he was drafted, and he was been with the Pack when he's after a couple years of the Packers, he's been like about 310ish. And you can even go back and look at pictures of him from the combine or his rookie year. He's put on considerable bulk. He's bulked up a lot of muscle on his body. So I think that hurt his RAS score a little bit too. It's just his weight and his bench score, because he had an RAS of 6.72, like I said. Probably if he, if he did his RAS now, I'd probably be like for 7.5, something like that. But also another guy people forget, BJ Raji. He had a 5.35 RAS score. So he was out of the thresholds too. And he obviously worked out. Another guy, late guy, Johnny Jolly, if you guys remember from Texas A&M, he had a 2.36 RAS score. And he was, for a 6th-round pick, he worked out. He started some games. He was a decent player. He was in the rotation, this and that. He was out of the league for, I think, a year because he had some substance issues. But I would consider him a hit. Another one, recent hit so far at least, Carl Brooks, who had a 5.24 RAS, something like that. Another guy, at least so far, early in his career, obviously, but still he was a hit. Another one that was outside of the thresholds, Jason Spitz, if you guys remember him, a 3rd-round pick out of Louisville. He had an RAS. He wasn't really bad, but his RAS was at 6.9, so not terrible, but still outside of the thresholds. But he was a good player. He started some. He started some games for Green Bay. The Packers let him walk away. He signed with a couple other teams, started some games too, and those other teams. So I consider him a hit just because, he made it. He played in the league for a number of years. He started some games and stuff like that. So he was a guy that's outside of the thresholds, and he was a quote unquote hit. And then, but also some guys that were busts, basically busts. Now, these aren't literal draft busts because some of these guys were day 3 type guys. So you can't consider a guy in the 6th round of tech a bust, but they're still like busts in the sense of they're outside. I'm saying they're busts in the sense of they're outside the Packers thresholds and they didn't pan out at all. Guys that weren't very good or whatever. And these are guys that didn't have like any sort of injury issues or off-field issues, not really. So things that were, I'm not including guys who had issues that were outside of their control. Okay, so like Jared Abbrederis, if you guys remember him, he was not very good. He was kind of a bust. In the similar, he had a slow RAS score of like 5 point something. Another guy, Jared did have some injuries, but still, even when he was healthy, he wasn't that good. Another guy, Amari Rodgers, obviously Amari Rodgers, complete bust. I think he's just a straight bust, but especially they trade up for him. Another one, Jake Hansen, didn't make sense. I don't know why they drafted him. He had a really bad low RS score. This guy should not have been drafted. I don't know if he even belonged in the NFL. He had a 2.99 RS, I believe. Bust there, outside of the thresholds. One I will mention was Cole Madison was kind of the thresholds, but kind of like I said earlier, he wasn't really 100% his fault. He had a knee injury. He had a personal off-field issue with a teammate that in college had committed suicide, and it really caused some trauma with him. So it wasn't completely out of his in his control. Sorry, but still, he basically was a bust, but not 100% his fault. So I guess you can't really count him. Junius Costin, again, not a high pick, but again, outside of the thresholds, was a bust. From like I said, guys who outside thresholds didn't make it. More recently, Josiah DeGuara, sorry, 3rd round pick, just never could really find his footing. Just I was outside the thresholds as far as size. Athletically, interestingly enough, he was okay because from before Goody, or actually even during Goody, so this most recent draft, he didn't draft very athletic guys, and Ted Thompson drafted a lot of athletic tight ends. So interesting, weirdly enough. So athletically at the time, DeGuara was okay, but the size-wise, he didn't fit, and he was basically a bust. Ford, the defensive tackle from Miami, another guy not other side of the thresholds. As far as size, even really technically, he was 333, the heaviest defensive lineman they drafted in a really long time, since Raji basically, and he had a low RS score. He's been basically a bust. He's not going to make the roster. 7th round pick, yes, I know, but bust as far as outside of the thresholds, not making it. Another guy, a couple guys from a few years ago, Ricky Elmore from Arizona, bust outside of the thresholds. DJ Smith, linebacker from Appalachian State, had a .44 RES. Ouch. So yeah, he didn't make it, obviously. Martin Charles, outside of the thresholds, athletically and size-wise. Because he was a little underweight. He was 184. The Packers usually like guys around 180 or 190. Sorry, he was a bust. Quentin Rollins, of course, another bust. Outside of their thresholds, athletically, he was like a 6.7 RS, 6.72, something like that. The guy some people might think is a bust, Clinton Dix, but I don't know. He had a Pro Bowl year. He had a couple okay years. They traded him, got a draft pick out of him. Kind of. You can if you want. I'm not going to argue with you if you want to claim him as a bust as far as being outside the thresholds, because he had like a 4.5 RS or 5.5 RS, just a low RS score. So if you want to consider him a bust, that's fine. I'm not going to argue with you about that. Okay, so like I said, mixed bag, but kind of mostly busts. Okay, now on to Adam Huddle, who had 2 questions. So to his first question on the defensive tackles, he says, do I think it will be easier now to narrow the defensive tackle thresholds without having a 1 tech, 3 tech, and 5 tech to look for? And he said, also, did I have different thresholds for those specific roles prior? So in regards to that, not really. I don't think the thresholds are really going to change too much. You're probably not going to see another TJ Slayton drafted. Probably not, because they don't need that true nose tackle really. And when I say TJ Slayton, I mean a guy that's like 330-ish. You might see some 315, 320, 325 guys, maybe 325, probably like 320s or less though. Those type of guys. But the But the Packers do. But I will say one thing: the Packers will use the 3-tech. Even though it's a 4-3 even, they will still use some odd fronts, and they'll still have technically a guy will be technically a 3-tech. So they'll still have those guys. But they never really drafted many 5-techs before. Interestingly enough, Dean Lowry was the only real 5-tech you can consider that they drafted because he was 6'5", like 300 pounds. Those are usually either your 3-tech sizes that are usually like 6'4", 6'5", 6'6", like 290 to 305, sometimes 310. Long guys, not really a lot of fat on their bodies. Those are usually 5-techs. But they haven't really drafted any, like I said, besides Lowry. And then with their thresholds, they don't really differentiate between like 3-tech or 2-tech or nose tackle or whatever as far as their athletic thresholds. They're kind of the same. Okay, so then on to his next question. Sorry about that. Inside linebacker thresholds, and if I have a minimal weight, and if I see them going down to account for the speedy will linebackers. Sorry, I can't talk sometimes. So generally, like the Packers like their off-ball linebackers as far as their weight to be around 230 to 245. I would say, well, the thresholds I would say is about 230 to 235, 245. Sorry, can't talk. Early and ready for bed. So like I said, 230 to 245, but more preferably the 235 to 245 range. With minimum of 31-inch arms. Outside of, there's a couple guys they drafted that had shorter arms, but they were drafted to play special teams, like McDuffie and the dude from TCU, Summers. Summers TCU had like 30. I think Summers had 30-inch arms too. So like say the minimum threshold would be 31, but they prefer the guys have at least 32 because they've drafted more guys with 32-inch arms and only like a couple with 31. And then they like at least a 10-foot broad jump. And Goody likes a 4.6 40. Ted would draft slower guys, but Goody is every linebacker draft is at at least 4.6 40. And then at least a 7.26 3-cone drill, but they prefer again at least a 7. So anybody like in the earlier rounds or anybody they're drafting to potentially be a starter or be in the rotation, you're looking for at least a 7 3-cone. But they'll make an exception for their late day 3 guys that are probably be special teamers, and it'll be like a 7.26, stuff like that. Let's see, and then if it's a middle linebacker, I'm just me guessing. I'm assuming we don't know this yet, guessing since the system changed, but they're probably going to want someone a little bit bigger on the bigger side, so probably 235 to 240 ish, maybe 245, but probably in that range. Probably not the 230 guys. But if they drafted a will linebacker, I could see them going for someone that's like in the 230 range. But I don't think it'll be much lighter, especially if it's someone they're expecting to play snaps or start or what have you. Okay, I believe that was the last question. Yes, that was the last question. Okay, cool. So kept this under a half hour. It's not too bad. Got those questions pretty quickly. So if you guys have any more questions about like the Packers athletic thresholds, connection to with RAS or what have you, just hit me up on Twitter, and I'll probably make another video probably next week, since we'll have all the athletics. But next week we'll have all the athletic testings for the Senior Bowl, so I'll go over that. Talk about that stuff, guys that fit, guys that don't fit the Packers. I'll talk about my board that I put together every year for the Packers, and all that good fun stuff. Oh, and of course, don't forget, I am doing to check out the Cheesehead TV draft guide. I am doing the defense tackle, sorry. And then also I am doing a feature article as far as listing some guys that the Packers will not draft. And also check out, what else? My podcast with Joey on the Cheesehead TV YouTube channel. We've already done quarterbacks, running backs, and wide receivers. So next will be offensive tackles. We'll record that this weekend. Probably it'll be up probably Monday. Anything else? I'm trying to think. Just always hit me up on Twitter, at BMoff. You can see down at the bottom. And click subscribe, all that good stuff to get the algorithm going, so I can get more subscribers, more viewers, and I can put together more content, more continual content, maybe even some better content. Maybe we'll get like a microphone or something like that, a better camera or something like that. Maybe get some sort of graphic setup for my channel. All right, so thanks for watching, guys. See you later, and take it easy.